going next to, we're staying in Florida, but we're going to Alex Smith. Alex, you're up.
Wow. First of all, this is such a great conversation. Thank you so much, Dan. I was just at one of your restaurants yesterday for lunch out here in Palm Harbor. So,
oh, great.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, not only great food, but like I went over to the table, and on the table was like, like write your thank yous for Miss Mary. And I'm like, I don't go there in person a lot. I usually just pick it up from the drive-through or whatever. But all these customers, like to your point, it comes back to you, that honor, dignity, respect. Like people were just writing thank yous to, I guess, one of the like longtime employees at this Chick-fil-A who was like retiring or something like that. And they were just leaving out markers and stickers to write this huge card, and people were actually doing it. And it just struck me that while you were talking, it's like, you were able to do that on such a large scale. Like I can understand like maybe at one like location, but I was like, how many other Chick-fil-A's is something like this going on? Probably, where people are writing things like this, or people, are just like the culture is like multiplied, on such a grand scale. So I guess my question for you is, over like your 30 plus years, what are those like instances where you knew like you were succeeding in the culture that you were creating? Because as a customer, I could see it, but like, how could you see it? What are some of those moments and stories maybe that you thought you were succeeding on such a grand scale? Because I feel like it's just so hard to do when you're not able to meet or be at every location all the time.
There's so much I want to say about what you just said, Alex. I hope I can, you might,
Okay.
I have to say what's on top of my mind, and then you need to make sure I answer your question.
Okay.
Because the first thing you started with, how does this happen with Miss Mary and getting notes? And that's very localized, obviously. And it starts with the selection of the right leader. Of course, I talk about this in Bet on Talent, but I can't stress that enough. I told you Truett taught me people decisions are the most important decisions we make, but who we give the keys to the restaurant to is the most important of all those decisions, because they make this culture thing for Chick-fil-A work. And still today, it's what I'm so amazed about. 2,500 different franchisees, over 200,000 employees, and yet you get this consistency. And people say, how does that happen? Well, it goes back to the selection of the leader. And while as franchisees, Chick-fil-A Incorporated cannot coach them, they can't coach them on hiring, they can't coach them on managing those employees. They can have brand standards and they can do training on food prep and those things, but all of that belongs to the franchisee, and there are 2,500 different ones of them. So how do you get consistency? We have consistency in the selection of the leader in the restaurant. So that's the first thing. It's like, and they bring their own knack to that in their community. The second thing that came to mind is specific measurables. How do you know you're doing well? Chick-fil-A has tons of them, but there's two. Your internal culture is strong based on your engagement score. So if you're not measuring engagement, you really can't tell whether or not your culture is strong or not. You can have a feel for it, but that's only from your feeling, and that doesn't mean that that's consistent throughout. And then secondly, for us, it was, well, what are the customer service scores? Sales, profits, that's one monitor, but really what you want to see is, where do you stand on customer service? And a lot of metrics around that. So those are the two things that helped us understand if our culture was strong. And then lastly, the stories. And I cut off a little bit a moment ago when I was talking about the pepper grinder and all that and what happened next. But this from Bet on Talent, we started getting all those emails and all those stories. And, I have a Google alert for Chick-fil-A so that I still see the stories. So since I wrote Bet on Talent and talked about Jeff Urban and I don't know if I called it by his real name or fake name in the book, but the guy who went and got the boats and rescued the people in the Houston and Hurricane Harvey, for example. That story was amazing. But then since then, it's the people who see the little child choking in the back seat that mom can't see, and they dive through the drive-through window to save the child. Just story after story of how these Chick-fil-A team members go above and beyond anything you'd ever expect from a fast food restaurant. That tells us that culture is strong as well when you see people living that out.
Phenomenal.